In the year 1150 BCE, history was not written. It was ground into the dust by 900 iron chariots. For 20 years, the people of Israel lived like cattle, their prayers muffled by the metallic thunder of an invincible enemy. In a world of bronze and bone, these machines were the ancient equivalent of modern tanks, commanded by a man named Sisera, whose heart was as jagged as the scythed wheels he deployed. The sun had set on the era of miracles, and the nation was suffocating under an iron fist. But in the heart of the Ephraimite hill country, beneath a lone palm tree, sat a woman named Deborah. She was the Neviah, the one who breathes the words of the Almighty, and she was about to dismantle an empire using nothing but a storm, a prayer, and a single tent peg. This was a circle of sorrow, a rhythmic, agonizing pulse of national decay. First, the drift, faith dissolving into the easy corruption of neighboring idols. Then, the rot, moral decay weakening the knees of a once proud people. Finally, the iron. King Jabin of Hatzor did not merely rule, he consumed. From his fortress in the north, he unleashed Sisera to enforce a suffocating tax of blood and dignity. To a peasant armed with a sharpened hoe or a fire-hardened staff, the horizon did not just shimmer, it shuddered. The sound of 900 chariots reaches you first, a rhythmic metallic thunder that vibrates in the marrow of your teeth. For 2 decades, a generation had grown up knowing only the glint of Canaanite iron and the taste of their own terror. What answer could a shepherd people have for the machines of war? The heavens searched for a vessel of wisdom, not a warlord. Deborah held a scepter made of pure conviction. In a culture that demanded women remain in the shadows of the domestic tent, she commanded the light. Merchants with parched throats and warriors with shaking hands made the grueling climb into the highlands, not for charity, but for the law. They came to stand before the palm and receive a judgment that felt as heavy and as true as a stone dropped into a deep well. When she spoke, the chaotic tribal bickering ceased. When she looked at a man, he didn't see a wife or a daughter. He saw the reflection of a God who had not yet abandoned them. The time for judgment, however, was shifting into the time for war. The dust of the road settled upon the sandals of Barak as he approached the prophetess. Deborah did not offer a suggestion. She delivered a mandate that vibrated with the bronze resonance of the divine. "Go," she commanded. "Take 10,000 men to the heights of Mount Tabor. Draw the iron heart of Sisera toward the river Kishon. I will deliver him into your hand." Barak looked at the woman and felt the crushing weight of the impossible. 10,000 farmers against the peak of Canaanite technology was a suicide pact. His response was the calculation of a man who knew that steel is useless if the spirit is absent. "If you go with me, I will go. If you do not go, I stay." Barak was refusing to move unless the divine, embodied in Deborah, walked into the mouth of the slaughter beside him. She agreed, but with a chilling caveat. The glory would not be his. The life of Sisera would not fall to a general's sword on a field of honor. He would be sold into the hand of a woman. The mobilization was a ragged, desperate sight. Farmers laid down the plow to grip the spear. Shepherds traded the staff for the sling. On the heights of Mount Tabor, they watched the Jezreel Valley glimmer with a terrifying mechanical coldness. Below, Sisera's campfires spread like a fallen galaxy. Each flame represented a professional soldier and a horse of war. The Israelites were trapped between the promise of a prophetess and the reality of iron. The summit of Tabor was a silence before a scream. Sisera looked up at the mountain, waiting for the peasants to descend so he could crush them. But Deborah was looking at the sky. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent of ozone. She turned to Barak, her eyes reflecting a light that did not come from the sun. Go, this is the day. The Israelites began their descent, a suicide charge toward the flat plains. Sisera signaled for his chariots to advance, the wheels beginning to hum. Then the heavens broke. It was not a mere storm. It was a flash flood of geological proportions. The Kishon River, a winding stream, transformed into a violent monster in seconds. The dry, cracked earth of the valley became a thick, sucking black soup. The miracle of the Kishon was not fire from heaven, but mud. The very weight of the iron chariots, their greatest technological advantage, became their death sentence. The heavy wheels sank to the axles. Horses, panicked and screaming, flailed in the mire, pulling the chariots deeper into the sludge. The modern army of Hazor was paralyzed, anchored to the earth by its own arrogance. The light Israelite infantry fell upon them like wolves, slaughtering the charioteers where they sat, trapped in metal cages of their own making. In the chaos, Sisera abandoned his post and fled on foot. He sought sanctuary at the tent of Jael, wife of Heber the Kenite. The law of the desert is absolute. Hospitality is a sacred bond of bread and salt. Jael stepped into the light and beckoned him. "Turn aside, my lord. Do not be afraid." She gave him warm, fatty milk to induce the heavy sleep of the exhausted, and covered him with a rug. But Jael was not merely a hostess. She was the instrument of a prophecy. As the man who had ordered the crushing of her neighbors lay in a stupor, she did not reach for a sword. She reached for the tools of her own labor, a mallet and a sharpened tent peg. With the cold precision of a master builder, she drove the peg through Sisera's temple, pinning his head to the very earth he had tried to conquer. When Barak finally arrived, Jael simply pulled back the curtain. There lay the honor he had sought, stolen by a woman's hand. To ensure this victory was etched into the collective soul, Deborah composed a storm of words. The song of Deborah is a raw, rhythmic roar of triumph. She used it to weaponize memory, exalting the tribes of Zebulun and Naphtali, who bled in the Kishon, while turning a political gavel on the cowards. The tribe of Reuben, who stayed among the sheepfolds listening to the flute, and Dan, who hid behind his ships, were shamed with a cadence that would ring for generations. Neutrality, she sang, is a slow-acting poison. Yet she pivoted to a moment of startling cinematic empathy. She described Sisera's mother, leaning against a palace window in Hatzor, wondering why the hooves of her son's chariots were delayed. Her ladies-in-waiting whisper of spoils and captive girls, unaware that the invincible general is already rotting in the dirt of a nomad's tent. This image of the empty window highlights the absolute finality of judgment. Deborah, the bee, had managed the hive and delivered the sting. For 40 years afterward, the land breathed, the longest rest it would ever know. She had shattered the glass ceiling of the ancient world, proving that when the heavens seek a vessel, they do not look at social status, but for the soul that does not flinch. Her legacy is a summons to rise when others hide, and to realize that our iron chariots are only as strong as the mud they stand upon. The cycle of history turns, and the shadows always return. But for one brilliant moment, the sun rose in its full strength. The image remains. The iron is gone, the song has faded, and the window in Hatzor remains empty.